Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, Montreal has re-signed goaltender Samuel Montembeault to a 2-year deal. What does this mean for Carey Price? What does this mean about a potential trade for Mikey DiPietro? And we follow up on the rest of your mailbag questions all inside today's show.
For Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 660 of Locked On Canadiens. As always, thank you for making us your first listen. If you are listening to this wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're making us your first watch of the day and you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much for subscribing and following along. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Metla, and I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba. And Laura, once again, Kent Hughes is keeping us just on our toes enough before we go down to 3 episodes a week so that we can never fully relax here covering the Canadiens.
It's an exciting offseason. What can we say? Kent Hughes is getting lots of things done. Maybe not at the pace that I want because I want to get some rest. Maybe not at the pace that some of the listeners want because they want things to be happening all the time. But locking up Samuel Montembeault was something that needed to be done, or making a decision on what to do with him was something that needed to be done. And now they have done it. They have rewarded him handsomely for what they put him through last year. He seems, by all accounts, he seems like a good guy, a team guy. Don't know if at the end of the contract he's still going to be in Montreal. But I think this is a decent amount. This is a decent term, a decent reward for a player like Samuel Montembeault.
Yeah. The only thing that surprised me out of all of this is that Samuel Montembeault was given a 2-year, $1 million AAV contract. The price is about right. He gets a raise on what he made last year for not only playing injured, but playing injured on the worst team in the NHL, so they could try and get Carey Price back, not rush Cayden Primeau into the NHL. I don't like to say that teams owe players contracts for things, but this was the very least the Canadiens could do, because even if Carey Price is healthy, and we're going to get to him to start our next segment in a little bit here, Samuel Montembeault, if he goes on waivers and the team claims him, he's still going to get paid. And the Canadiens are assuring that. And I'm very curious to know what the plan is right now. Like, if Carey Price is healthy, you have 3 NHL quality. I'm going to say quality lightly. We don't know what a fully healthy Samuel Montembeault looks like. He played hurt a lot last year. He had good 5-on-5 save percentage numbers, but the penalty kill sank him, and we don't know if the penalty kill's gotten any better quite yet. And Jake Allen's coming off an injury here. So I don't know if Samuel Montembeault is just that pull to shoot. We have a safety option that if you are feeling something tight, you're feeling a little banged up, you have the sniffles, go home. Samuel, come up from Laval or come out of the press box. You're suiting up for the night as a backup or a starter or whatever. It's a really nice safety net, but I'm very curious whether or not this is an indicator for Carey Price. And I think that's just my Habs panic brain going off in the worst possible way, because it's like, so what does this mean? It's 2 years. What do you, not a lot of teams give a backup goaltender 2 years, let alone one that might not even be their regular backup goaltender. And I don't know if I'm just overthinking it, I'm tired, or the offseason, doldrum brain panic is set in. Laura, am I crazy? Or
You're
more
not
crazy than I already was?
No, you're not. But here's the thing. My panic brain is also going off, but it's also going off in relation to Jake Allen. That's where my panic brain is. And I'm getting a little bit upset about this because I feel like it means that they don't want to keep Jake Allen in the conversation anymore, which we knew he's going to be a good trade piece for people who need competent goaltending. We knew that. We knew people are going to be calling about him. I just am not ready to say goodbye to him, but this kind of seems like the writing might be on the wall a little bit.
The Jake Allen thing isn't something I had considered because my thought then is, do they think Carey Price is good to go? And Samuel Montembeault saves them some money, and now Jake Allen is expendable. I don't love that idea. And I'm going to be real honest, because if Carey Price gets hurt, you are relying on a guy who is not proven as an NHL 1A or 1B type goaltender. Backup, fine for what he's going to be at, and hopefully they improve on last year. But I don't love the idea of Samuel Montembeault being Carey Price's sole backup, especially because we don't know what's going on with Cayden Primeau quite yet, if he's cut for the NHL this year or not. There's a lot of risk. And it's funny, someone else mentioned something in one of our mailbag questions that related to goaltending as well. And it's something that's been bouncing around before Montembeault signed today. And Laura, do you have that question in front of you?
I do. So this was a question that was meant for the next week's mailbag, but we're including it in our today's special edition Tuesday mailbag, and it's from Chenanda Lerbong. And the question is, should the Habs take a flyer on Michael DiPietro to improve the goaltending depth within the Habs organization? Now, I will point out that this was posted before Samuel Montembeault was announced, but I still think it's worth discussing. And there's another question that we will ask a little bit later in the in the mailbag that's not related to goaltending.
I'm very curious about Mikey DiPietro because he's not a big goaltender like a lot of the other ones the Habs have signed. He stands just 6 feet tall, 23 years old. He did accept his qualifying offer from the Canucks and was also given permission by the team to seek a trade because obviously Thatcher Demko is the one ruling the net there. At the AHL level, he's had a .908, a .916, and a .901 save percentage, and he's been 21-11-2. 3-1-0 and 15-13-5. At the NHL level, he's gotten lit up basically because the Canucks were terrible. He played one game in 18-19 as an emergency call-up, let in 7 goals. The next year, started one game for the Vancouver Canucks, had a 7.16 save percentage or goals against average and an 8.57 save percentage. And in one game this year, 3.14 goals against, 8.24. And obviously that's not the end-all be-all, but he hasn't shown that he can make that jump to the next level. But he might be a fresh start option. And if the Canadiens are trading Jake Allen and Samuel Montembeault is going to be in the NHL, they do need an AHL backup, or at least an AHL person to split the time with Cayden Primeau. And DiPietro seems like a good fit, but I don't see the path to an NHL job getting any easier for him here. And I can't see Montreal being an option for him when there are teams that are likely have an easier path forward right now, because at the end of the day, Carey Price is still there somewhere for at least another 4 years. Like, you're not getting the starting job, at least not right now.
I really like how you said he's not a big goaltender, and then you said he was only 6 feet, because that's still an entire foot taller than I am.
Like Joe Verbatic's 6'6". Carey Price is like 6'4". Like, by comparison, Jake Allen's not a big goaltender, but like we see these monster guys like Vasilevsky or like Ben Bishop when he was still playing, who are 11 million feet tall and like just
wide. They're just broad, right? Like,
yeah. DiPietro is not that, so he relies a lot on athleticism. And if we have Dylan Waugh on, assuming nothing happens, we should ask him about DiPietro. We do have more goaltending stuff and related to Carey Price, and we're going to get into all of that coming up in our next segment. But first, today's show is brought to you by the folks at Built Bar. You followed this podcast for long enough now. You know we love Built Bar, and they have so many good flavors for you. And the newest one, Coconut Brownie Chunk Built Bar. Delicious chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. And folks, I need you to wipe the drool off your chin. They're low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all delicious. And you can take them anywhere. Take them in the morning to work if you need breakfast on the go. Take them midday to fuel yourself. I take them on hikes for that little bit of energy and recovery. Built has everything for you. And if you go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15, you're going to get 15% off your order. And they are always adding new flavors, including the new coconut brownie puff. So go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your next order. And also, before we jump right back into our show, the NFL Top 50 Countdown is going on at Locked On NFL. They're going to give you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline, available July 18th. That is Monday, the day we're recording this, on the Locked On NFL podcast or on YouTube. So tune in for that. You don't want to miss that. All right, Laura, I know we have another Carey Price related question here before we dive into everything else in our, we'll call it
Part
mailbag.
2 of our mailbag.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Mailbag number 2 of the week. Well, this is all mostly questions that were left over from Friday. And we're really grateful to everybody, including IMU Livestream. Question for the mailbag. If Carey Price did play this season, do you guys still think that the Canadiens will not try to go for it, or will he get traded? If so, who would take a contract like his?
I think this year, regardless of who the starting goalie is, they're not going to go for it because it's a waste of everything else they've done. If they were going to go for it, they wouldn't have traded Jeff Petrie. They wouldn't have traded Tyler Toffoli. They wouldn't have traded Arturi Lehkonen, regardless of Carey Price's health. And I think this year is just as important for getting Carey back to up to full speed. He doesn't have to be a 940 goalie anymore. If he can give the Canadiens, let's say 915, 910 goaltending, and Jake Allen can give them roughly the same, they're far better off than they were last year. It's just getting him back to consistency again. And if they get Pierre-Luc Dubois, if Slavkovsky turns out to be a godsend in disguise, if all these young guys continue their upward trajectory and progress, then maybe you take a crack at it next year when some of these other contracts, Jonathan Drouin is off the books. You can probably move Mike Hoffman with a year off his deal. You're going to clear so much cap space off the books that you can afford to take a swing in free agency or in trades and add some big names to your franchise. I do not think this is the year for it, though. This year should be a retooling and getting that train pushed down the track in the right direction. Trying to switch course right now, you end up like the Flyers potentially, just caught in no man's land and terrible with a goalie who's hurt or whatnot. It's not the year to go for it, unfortunately.
It's quite interesting because some of the comments that I've been seeing just simply on our YouTube channel, like people are very, very widely split on this, and also split on whether or not Kent Hughes is doing the right thing. I think for me and for a lot of people, like we talked about how, the moment he got hired was the highest stock he's going to have until if and when he wins a Stanley Cup, right? Everything he does from now on is going to be a question mark until we see it play out. Somebody asked me the other day, like, was it Wright or Slavkovsky? Slavkovsky, who would have been the right decision? I was like, ask me in 5 years, I feel the same way about the Jeff Petrie trade, right? We talked a lot about, we're thinking about it. And somebody did bring up the point that, Carolina and Vegas ruined the market, or Vegas, in fact, ruined the market by letting Max Pacioretty go for nothing. So that is kind of like, when you look at it in that context, then the Jeff Petrie return is amazing. But then some people are just kind of like, let's not tank because that's just a loser philosophy. And I think there needs to be a process. And I'm not too, they're not tanking in the way that Chicago's tanking, which is blatant. They're tanking in the way that they want to see what they have in the young players, and they want to see what their assets are, and they want to see what they can, how much they can change out, how much they can switch out in this team. Anyway, so we've got a question from longtime listener, Mike Bernick. Good morning, Lauren Scott. So this was last week. I'm looking forward to draft day, or this is 2 weeks ago. Here's my question. When was the last time a first overall pick had been traded? I've thought about it. I'm sure it's happened. I just can't remember. Also, in your opinion, who won the trade? So there have actually been quite a few, and some of them have been not super great ideas. But the last one, I believe, Scott, you found was 2003.
Yes, and this is a Grantland article. So if I am wrong on this, this is the first one that popped up.
Was it McIndoe?
Let's see who wrote this article. It was McIndoe. So the Panthers traded the then number 1 pick and a 3rd rounder to the Penguins for the number 3 pick, a 2nd round pick, and Mikael Samuelsson. And so the Penguins ended up picking first overall. They swapped 1st and 3rd picks and ended up picking Marc-Andre Fleury. But the year before that, Panthers were involved in a trade for the number 1 pick as well. The Blue Jackets traded the number 3 pick and the right to swap picks in 2003 to Florida for the number 1 overall pick. So Florida just straight up ran the risk of trading the first overall pick for a lower pick. That's it. And what happened is that's what happened because Columbus finished ahead of Florida. So the right to swap picks was not exercised in that draft afterwards, which it then makes sense why Florida was such a disaster for so many years. Like,
those were the decisions that were being made.
Yes, and then obviously the most famous one, I guess, besides Guy Lafleur is 1999. And on draft day, the Canucks traded Brian McCabe and a future first-round pick, number 11th overall, to the Blackhawks for the number 4 pick, then sent that pick and 2 third-rounders to the Lightning for the number 1 pick. Then the Canucks sent the number 1 pick to the Thrashers for the number 2 pick and a third-round pick, allowing the Vancouver Canucks to famously draft Daniel and Henrik Sedin under the watchful eye of Brian Burke, which it's not often that trading out of the first overall spot works out, but the first overall pick in 1999 was Patrick Steffen. So I think things turned out pretty well for the Canucks and not so much the Atlanta Thrashers. Great jerseys, but terrible trade guys. So
I think there were a bunch of them in that little 5 to 10 year period. And then it doesn't seem to be happening all that much anymore. And I personally think that, so this was before, right? Because it was when there was speculation was rampant that the Canadiens were going to trade or might be shopping that first overall pick. I think they were going to keep it all along, but I did think in the draft that they were trading up to 4th to get both Wright and Slavkovsky. What ended up happening was they got Kirby Dach. And I think maybe in our next segment, we'll start with our Kirby Dock question that was in the mailbag for last week.
Yeah. So as always, if you want to send us your mailbag questions for our actual Friday mailbag when we record it Thursday night for Friday, instead of, just kind of throwing it in wherever we feel like right now, you can tweet us at @LO_Canadiens. You can email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Slide into the YouTube comments. Just don't be a jerk, please. That's all we ask. We love respectful comments and respectful people. Don't be mean. You don't have to agree with everyone, but just get along and we'll answer all your questions there. But coming up in our final segment, we're going to get to the rest of the mailbag questions that have spilled over into part 2. And that's all coming up next. So we are back. It is part 2 of our mailbag. I guess we're the sequel to the sequel. We're
Star Wars now.
We're Star Warsing the podcast, I guess, here. As always, at @LO_Canadiens, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, or the YouTube comments. If you want to send us mailbag questions, we are always grateful for them. Laura, what else is in our leftover question bag here?
So we did kind of touch on this on Friday, but I wanted to spend a little bit more time on it. And it was from Patrick L. How much pressure do you feel that Kirby Dock is our potential number 2 center? How much pressure do you feel he has? And how many points do you feel he needs to get in order for that deal not to feel like a bust? So I've seen a little bit of Kirby Dock conversation today, and a lot of people are just kind of like, well, trade him for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I'm like, I don't think that that's the plan.
No, and here's the thing is, we don't know what Kirby Dach's full ceiling is, and we think Nick Suzuki can top out at, 80 points in a good season if everything continues to pace the way it is. If Kirby Dach puts up 45 to 50 points this season on a team that's in flux, I think you're kind of happy if you're Kent Hughes. When the team gets better and, if Slavkovsky ends up being that second line winger or whomever, and the team continues to, progress, you're going to want to see his points go up. But I think setting a 45 to 50 point goal for the second line center, he'll probably get some power play time. I imagine he's going to get plenty of ice time here, especially depending on what they do with Christian Dvorak. And I think that's a safe bet. The biggest thing is you don't want to see him stagnate. You want to see progress. If the points aren't there, but you see him taking steps forward in other ways, I think you're happy then. He doesn't, we saw Cole Caulfield this year struggle to put up points, but you saw improvements in his game that were working. The luck wasn't there. If Kirby Dach stagnates or, looks like he's just kind of lost out there, then you kind of worry a little bit about whether or not this trade's a bust. But until I see Kirby Dach play, because admittedly, I didn't watch any of Chicago. Why would I subject myself to 2 bad hockey teams?
They were very bad.
I don't quite know where to, place my feeling on him right now, but I will do so once I get a chance to watch him in the preseason and when the regular season starts.
Right. And here's the thing is that I think it's very important to kind of remember that not only was his growth derailed by injury, which now they're saying that, it's not something that we're going to have to worry about long term, but also he was picked the same year that Cole Caulfield was picked, right? Like it has not been that long. He hasn't had that much time. But if you are on Twitter, and you want to see a long, detailed thread explaining Kirby Dock's play that gave me a lot of hope. There's a user called high as in like you could be high, or like high as in high level, high_Sebastian. And I did retweet the thread from our Twitter account. And it is quite detailed. It has a lot of video analysis. Unfortunately, it's just on Twitter. So, you can sort of, if you're a Twitter user, you can find it. I can also link the thread if you want to send us an email. I'll try and pin it on our YouTube as well. And that made me feel a lot better about Kirby Dock, to be honest. Like there was a lot of potential in what Sebastian was saying. I thought the analysis was detailed and backed up by video evidence. So I think, everybody who's like a little bit concerned about this trade can rest a little bit easier. And I think for me, for the trade not to be a bust, personally, I think that we need to have, as a whole, a good 1A, 1B center depth. Nick Suzuki and Kirby Dock, I don't care who's, one, who's two. I just want him to be a top 6 forward. If he's a top 6 caliber forward, I'm going to feel better. And not next year, but, not this upcoming season, but the season after that. If he's not top 6 material, then I'm going to be like, well, this was not a great idea. Because at that point, Shane Wright is going to be top 6 material.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe.
Development is never linear, especially when you play for the Chicago Blackhawks and snap your wrist in half on a freak injury, and also play for the Chicago Blackhawks. So what else do we have in the mailbag, Laura?
Jimbo Slewfoot, who I love this name every time it comes up. Mailbox question speculation. Now, bear in mind, this was before the last Friday mailbag. I'm really excited for the future, but I can't help thinking we have too many good prospects and picks this year to develop them all. Sometimes I want to see a lot of players gone, such as Drouin and Petrie are at the top. Now Petrie's gone. Maybe Armia, although I think he could be very good this year. Hoffman, unless he connects with Dadonov. And Dvorak to form a good line. I have reservations about David Savard, but he can solidify the play of a rookie like he did with Romanov. As much as the team has to play their cards close to the chest right now, I wonder if they will go all out with young guys or a mix of older guys and younger guys to sturdy the ship. Please chip in on this, everyone. I'm hungry for opinions, and a bad season could lead to Connor Bedard. So I think that when you are in a rebuild and you aren't in your window yet, too many picks and prospects is not a bad thing. Because you're going to be able to trade those away, or you're going to be able to replace players that are too expensive and you have to let them walk.
That was my thought, was there's no such thing as too many good prospects. When it comes time for contracts, it is. Then unless you're, Steve Yzerman and Julian Breezewall, you have a lot of juggling to do. But the thing about the Habs prospect is that not a lot of them are signed to NHL deals quite yet. Yeah, Slafkovsky and Machar are... I imagine Owen Beck probably won't be too far behind that after this season here. But a lot of them are still in their junior leagues or in the NCAA or over in Europe. And I'm not totally worried about like contract space or money or anything like that. And I'd rather have too many options than not. Because when you're rebuilding, you want as many cracks at this as you can. If you only have, 6 draft picks, you better hit more often than not. When you have 13 in a draft, you want to hit on all 13, obviously, but if you have some misses, you're more than likely to have hits elsewhere. And it becomes a little bit easier to kind of focus on what you're doing in the future here. And the way the Canadiens are focusing on development now with Adam Nicholas and everyone else who is involved with prospects, I feel a lot safer about it than I did under Marc Bergevin in the previous regime here, because there's an emphasis on making sure their nutrition's up to where it needs to be. They have a game plan on, hey, we want you to work on this. This is what we want you to do when you go back to your league if you're not staying. Work hard, and this is it. There's an end goal and a process. If there was no process, then I'd panic about it a little bit. As for pieces getting moved out, Petrie's already gone. Betting lines are saying there's still one more move coming this week, which I guarantee is going to happen when we want to take a day off, or it's going to happen going into the weekend. But there's still things brewing, and it's still so early. Like, free agency was just last Wednesday. There is so much time left for things to happen here that I'm not sweating it. I'll worry about salary cap, extra bodies when we hit September and the and regular training camp is looming around the corner. I'll worry about it then, but for right now, there is a whole summer of things ahead right now. So I'm just going to let it roll off my back and not stress it too much.
Yeah, and I think that, as you said, there's no such thing as having too many good prospects in the system. And if you're building a perennial contender, there are some guys that know that they're going to be leaving in UFA either after a cup run or when some other guys come due. So like it's never a bad idea to have people waiting in the wings, and you're also going to be able to trade a lot of them. So I'm going to run through the rest of our questions. This one was sort of, I want to mention the question just because I want to thank the listener, but we've come up with a guest to kind of discuss this. But the question is, I have the pleasure of watching every single Lane Hudson game this coming year at Boston University. I'm super excited. However, I'm certain he won't be the power play quarterback as senior Dom Fensore is still on the team. I'm wondering if you have any predictions or ideas on how they could best use him this year. Do they leave him on the second power play? Do they run two defensemen on the first unit and play him as a forward on the first unit? And the team has revamped their entire coaching staff, so I have no idea what to expect. Raphael. So thanks, Raphael. I already emailed you back to tell you that we are inviting a guest very, very soon to talk about Lane Hudson in particular and how his development should be. And then we have a question from Paul G. The logjam now appears at forward. How do you think Hughes plans to deal with it? Right now, there seems to be no chance to play Raphael Harvey-Pinard or Jesse Ylonen.
I still think bodies are moving out here. I think guys like Yoel Armia are going to be shipped out. I know they said Dodonov is expected to start the season in Montreal, but I can't imagine that there might not be a team that comes knocking going, hey, he seems useful and you want cap space and you want to be bad, or we will give you X for him. And I can see Kent Hughes going, yeah, this is smart business. I got him for literally nothing. And flipping him into positive assets. It's like we just said with the whole cap space and too many prospects is something's going to give here soon. And there's going to be bodies moving out. And throughout the season, bodies are going to be moving out and they're going to call guys up, which is why they're doing as much as they can to load up the AHL team as it stands right now, because Raphael Harvey-Pinard will probably be called up when there's injuries. Yes, Ylonen will probably be called up when there's injuries. There's options for them, and I think they can jump into those roles sooner rather than later. I think they're both ready for NHL time. Harvey-Pinard more so than Ylonen, but it's not as log jammed when you consider a lot of these pieces are likely going to be gone by the trade deadline at the latest, if not before the regular season fully starts and teams are trying to finalize rosters and whatnot.
We have one final question from Chinana Lorbong. As I said, there was another non-goaltending question. Which music festival are you? Oshiaga, Heavy MTL, Il Sonic, which is the like it's dance, house dance, that kind of stuff, like stuff that I'm too old for, or Lasso MTL.
I'm gonna go ahead and just assume I'm Oshiaga because Arcade Fire, I'm gonna go ahead and just say that I'm Oshiaga because I'm not country. I don't do house and dance music and all that stuff. I am stay at home and just watch concerts on YouTube age though, so I don't think I could survive festivals because the minute it gets above 80, I go, man, it's a hot one out there. Got to stay hydrated. And then I will not pay $9 for a bottle of water at a festival. So
I'm also Oshiaga. I'm a little bit of everything and definitely do tend to listen to what's trendy at certain points and have like my favorites that are kind of like a little bit not secret favorites, but like low key favorites that not everybody listens to. So it's a big mix of everything. But here's my idea. Let's stop doing concerts in July and August or festivals in July and August, and let's start doing them in October. Then it's beautiful out. Like, it's not awful.
Why are we doing them when it's... I mean, I know why, because capitalism is a thing, but like, that's a lot of people who don't know how to drink water. Like, That's an insurance headache that I don't really care to think about. So I'm showing my age with this too, like in a big way.
Get off my lawn. No, you know what? I would go to a fall Oshiaga or heavy MTL, which is also in the summer, and Il Sonic, which is in August, and I would go to all of those things if they were in the fall. I just don't like the heat. Like I'm old for sure, but I'd get off my couch and I would go if it was like in more pleasant weather. And before I sign off, I'm just going to say that Glastonbury is like my bucket list, and it doesn't matter how old I am. One day I will go. I heard that Emma Thompson went like when she was like in her 50s. So I definitely want to do that one day in my life.
I mean, festivals aren't really my thing. I'm not a big crowds person. What can I say? So I'm boring. That is it for our Friday mailbag. If you want to send us questions at LO_Canadiens, lockdowncanadiens@gmail.com. In the YouTube comments, if you want to tweet us, Laura's at The Active Stick. I'm at Scott Matla. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube so you see our brilliant faces as we go. And we will see you all next time.